So this is a reaction video that I made to Xanderhal's video entitled Sure, Biological Sex Can Be a Binary If You Change the Definition. Xanderhal is also pretty ignorant about intersex conditions.
They've got both sex organs.
So I have also inserted sections from GNC-Centric's video Trans Activism and its Effect on Intersex Advocacy featuring Claire Graham.
I am interviewing Claire Graham today. She is an intersex advocate who's recently been banned from Twitter.
I have used a text-to-speech program to insert comments. Also, as I believe that gender identities are basically the neoliberal version of a soul, I have gone ahead and edited any reference to TERFs or transphobia and changed them to secularist and secular to more accurately reflect the debate at hand. Especially at the beginning of the video, I tend to just let Xanderhal talk to give everyone an accurate idea of where he is coming from. He often contradicts himself, which becomes more obvious as the video goes on. Also, he isn't really listening to the video. And when he unpauses, it often seems to be seconds ahead of where it was stopped. This makes it easier for him to just bulldoze his way through. So I have taken the liberty to edit out some of his more inane tangents in order to maintain the flow of the argument that is being made by Paradox Institute. Enjoy.
Secularist. The term secular has different meanings, but when I describe my own position as secular, I'm referring to a view encompassing two broad principles. Firstly, the separation of
Gender identity
from state leaves
gender identity
people free to practice their religion, provided they don't infringe the freedoms of others, and allows the non-religious to live without the imposition of
gender identity
through law, education, government, employment, or health. This promotes freedom of
gender identity
and from
gender identity. When I first saw this video recommended to me in my stream suggestions channel on my Discord, I thought it was like some science conservative channel, or science, you know, like one of those big conservative channels that are like funded by massive billionaire like media companies and whatnot to disseminate misinformation online. But it's really just this like YouTube channel with like 500 subs. Paradox Institute. I don't know what these people's thing is. I've never seen what their content is about. The intersex gambit, sex versus gender, is sex bimodal? The answer to that is yes. The denial of biological sex, how to recognize the female? Is this some
secular
shit? This is just a channel dedicated to... Oh my god, this is just a channel dedicated to being
secular.
Huh. Sex versus gender, the denial of biological sex, how to recognize the female? How to recognize the female? Hold on, we gotta get a look at this first.
In her 1990 book, Gender Trouble, queer theorist Judith Butler argued that the category of female was no longer reliable.
Okay, yeah.
Secularist.
Alright, this is
secular
shit. Poggers, who's ready? The female. I'm sorry, but there's only two types of people that refer to women as females.
Woman. Noun. Definition. An adult human female.
But there's only two types of people that refer to women as females.
Definition. An adult human female.
It's always dude bros and
secularists
that say females when referring to women.
At this point, Xanderhal is using guilt by association to try to discredit the dictionary definition of the word woman. Furthermore, he is also misinterpreting the title of the video. The name,
How to Recognize the Female,
refers to all species, not just humans. The video is now called From Humans to Asparagus. Females are females. This was presumably done in an effort to make this point even more obvious than it already was.
I don't know, it's just kind of a red flag. Alright, so we got why sex is binary. I should clarify, this is not true. Sex is not binary. I mean, we got the research document here. Here's a pretty good visual of this, you know. This is from the Scientific American. So I imagine this fucking brain-dead
secularist
YouTube channel probably doesn't have more credentials than the literal Scientific American, as well as the rest of the entire body of data and research behind this. So I imagine this...
Imagine all the people. It isn't hard to do.
This is basically how it works. It's not a binary where you have one option or the other.
Imagine there's no countries, yeah.
You know, when most people, when they think of binary, they think of binary code. It's like ones and zeros, and that's it. There's no twos, there's no threes, there's no 420s or 69s.
Nothing to kill or die for.
Nice. It's just one option or the other. That is by definition a binary. However, bimodal distribution means a spectrum, or a variety of options, but most of them fall into one or the other, right? Like, most people are male or female, but there's intersex people. And the existence of those people means sex just isn't binary.
You may say that I'm a dreamer.
Now, sex and gender are two different things. Now, gender is obviously a spectrum because it's socially constructed. There's nothing physical about gender other than, I guess, what you do to behave in the way you think best matches your gender identity and how you express yourself. But there's nothing solid, concrete, tangible about gender. It's completely socially constructed. So there's a potential infinite amount of genders, really. If you want there to be. I mean, it depends. If you want there to be.
Feelings, whoa, feelings, whoa, feelings.
I mean, it depends. But, yeah. Alright. We got some brain dead
Secular.
shit. I'm ready. Let's watch it.
Those who claim that biological sex is not binary, of male or female, but rather a spectrum of possibilities, will often use intersex to argue their case.
Intersex can be an example of people who do not fall into the binary, yep.
The idea that the body is either male or female is totally wrong, says a writer for Teen Vogue. People exist and break down this binary, she says. As someone who's done extensive research in sex and gender, I see this almost every day. Discussion with someone about sexual dimorphism, and they'll respond with confidence. Have you ever heard of intersex people, they ask? Of course, the answer is yes, I have. And this is where the case studies start flying in, as they tell me that intersex people are not male or female.
Not exactly. So here's the issue. It's not just male or female, right? Like, when you have a bimodal distribution of sexual characteristics, all sorts of fucking combinations of chromosomes when it comes to intersexuality, is that what it's called? I don't know.
Look at how he doesn't even really understand the graph he is waving at. He just sees
all sorts of fucking combinations of chromosomes.
He doesn't realize that there are no actual, non-decorative spectrums on that graph. For example, the multicolored rainbow at the top, which gives a strong impression of a spectrum, doesn't actually correspond to any scientific data. It was put there by a graphic design team, not scientists.
It's not so much that they're not male or female, it's just that they're somewhere on this spectrum.
Now, while most males and females develop typical reproductive structures, sometimes variations in this process occur. We call these variations intersex. Intersex individuals have rare differences in sex development, which can produce chromosomal, hormonal, or genital variations. To many, such variation shows us that the male-female binary is unreliable, that there are more than two sexes, and that sex is a spectrum.
True.
But is this true?
Yes.
Are intersex people really in between?
Yes.
The answer depends on how we define biological sex. Before we do, first, let's separate biological sex from variations of sex characteristics. Variation is commonplace within males and within females.
Okay.
For example, different sizes of sex organs and secondary sex characteristics are common within men and women.
Sure. This is so far does not negate any argument that sex isn't none of this argues against the claim that sex isn't a binary. In fact, this just has nothing to do with it. Yeah, some people have big dicks, some people have small dicks. Some chicks have dicks. Okay?
And yet, this variation does not mean that...
Yeah, I didn't expect us to be bringing dick size into the debate, but hey, I'm down.
Someone with atypical sex characteristics is less of a male or a female. It simply means sex characteristics vary in their form, size, and morphology. For instance, a woman without breasts may fall on the tail end of the distribution when it comes to female sex characteristics. Sure. And yet, this does not make her less of a woman or more of a man.
Okay. What is somebody who has both genitals?
Imaginary.
And or different sets of chromosomes?
It depends. If the different sorts of chromosomes include a Y chromosome, and the person has functioning androgen receptors, then that person will be male. On the other hand, if the different sorts of chromosomes don't include a Y chromosome, that person can only ever be biologically female. This is clearly explained throughout the video, but you were determined not to listen.
We're talking about people who are not intersex that just happen to have like a flat chest. I'm sorry, but just because a woman has a flat chest doesn't make her not female. What are you fucking talking about? It's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about people who are intersex.
Listen to that. He said.
What are you fucking talking about? It's not what we're talking about here.
It's like he thinks the video interrupted him. Like the video is supposed to know who he is, and be responding to him, instead of the other way around.
It's not what we're talking about here.
Yes, why doesn't the video know what we're talking about? Obviously, it is the video that is dumb.
What are you fucking talking about?
She still resides in the female category. She still is a female.
Okay.
To say otherwise would be horribly offensive and just plain wrong.
Maybe they're a trans man. Maybe they wouldn't be offended by you saying you're not female. I don't know. What are you fucking talking about? It's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about people who are intersex.
Therefore, variation of sex characteristics does not equal biological sex. Second,
okay.
Let's separate biological sex from...
I think he means that variation of sexual characteristics doesn't equal intersex. That was like... Hold on, this comes off like a little weird.
It comes off as weird to Xanderhal because he doesn't know intersex people are not hermaphrodites, i.e. people born with both sets of genitalia. In fact, people with both sets of genitalia don't actually exist. The idea that they do is actually a very old misconception about intersex people, and it's bigger part of the reason you don't hear the term hermaphrodite so often these days.
You know, I've tried to explain the reality of my condition. I've had them sort of accuse me of pathologizing myself and sort of all these things, but it's the reality of what it is. And they don't know because they don't bother to find out. They just think that, I think they really think that we are hermaphrodites.
Yeah, like the amount of trans activists not only use the term hermaphrodite, but genuinely believe there are people who have full male and female genitalia that are like functional at the same time.
They've got both sex organs.
Yeah, it's
believe that's like a common, that's like what intersex is, and it's like it's not. It's my
and the idea that 1.7% of the population could be like self-fertilizing hermaphrodites and none of us have noticed up till now is just incredible. We would all know 2 people.
So there isn't like a clear, visible male to female and everything in between kind of.
Not at all. Everyone is male or female, and then so DSDs are, you've got a male whose development was different or a female whose development was different, not something that we can't tell whether they were male or female. And there are cases that are complex to tell whether the person is male or female, but that doesn't mean they're not. It just means it's more complicated than it is for the rest of us.
But that doesn't stop Xanderhal from basing his entire belief system around protecting the erasure of these mythical creatures.
They've got both sex organs.
What he's doing is akin to starting a defense fund for the Loch Ness Monster.
What about people that come out and they have both genitals? We just talked about that.
Funny how this obvious piece of intersex history never seemed to appear in his great research document.
Therefore, variation of sex characteristics does not equal biological sex.
This makes no sense. Of course, your variations in your sexual characteristics are part of biological sex.
Again, Xanderhal is confused because he thinks intersex people are hermaphrodites. So he doesn't realize the phrase variations in sexual characteristics actually is referring to intersex people. All Xan knows is that he has this graph, and it literally has science written next to it, so how could it be wrong?
I mean, was he saying that, like... Wait, literally nobody's claiming that someone who has a 5-inch dick and someone who has a 6-inch dick are, like, different sexes, right?
Can you discuss a bit about the origins of assigned female at birth and assigned male at birth?
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's used a lot, yeah. So that comes from intersex surgeries, which is something that it's a human rights issue. So it's when a child is born and their genitalia is ambiguous. So it's not clear on inspection whether it's male or female, the genitalia. What sometimes will happen if for example, it's a small penis, then rather than saying the child is male, what happens is they perform surgery on the child and they convert the penis to a vagina and raise the child as female. So that's the assignment of the sex. So it's not their actual sex, it's the sex that is surgically assigned to them.
So,
it's just a really awful thing, and so every intersex law campaigns against it, but it's something that does happen, unfortunately.
Like you have males with a 5-inch dick, and you have males with a 6-inch dick. Then you got the males with the 8-inch dick, like myself here, and then you got the males with like the 10-inch dick. Like that's nobody's claiming this. Maybe I don't know. This seems like a straw man. Feels a little dishonest.
Well, at least you got to tell us about all the different types of dicks you know.
Then you got the males with the 8-inch dick, like myself here. This seems like a straw man. Feels a little dishonest.
Second, let's separate biological sex from personal identity.
Okay.
How you see yourself and how you express yourself.
That's gender.
Well done, shithead.
Variation of identity and expression is common. In fact, identity and expression are so varied that they are the most diverse set of traits we have as humans, akin to personality.
Mm-hmm.
Wait,
is he going to try to like slip in a gender and sex the same thing here? Is that what he's going to try to do?
Wait, are you interrupting mid-sentence again with some pointless tangent because you're clearly too ignorant to understand the video?
Is that what he's attempting?
Paradox Institute is arguing biological sex is a binary. He also just said that gender expression was as varied as personality, and you agreed with him.
They are the most diverse set of traits we have as humans, akin to personality.
Mm-hmm.
So why the fuck would he think gender was biologically determined by sex unless he thought there were only two personalities in the world, in which case they wouldn't be fucking varied, would they? You're just desperate to derail this conversation at any cost.
I'm on to you. I'm on to you.
Individuals can identify as anything they wish and express themselves in a spectrum of ways, and we should encourage everyone to live their best lives. And yet, this colorful diversity of identity and expression does not equal biological sex.
Okay, I agree with that. Your personal identity and your gender identity doesn't equal your biological sex.
She still is a female.
Okay.
To say otherwise would be horribly offensive and just plain wrong.
Maybe they're a trans man. Sex and gender aren't the same thing. Alright, let's move on.
So, if neither variation of sex characteristics nor personal identity defines the category of sex, then how can we define it? The answer is simple. The category of biological sex is defined through what developmental pathway you went down for the production of either sperm or eggs.
This is not how the scientific community determines biological sex at all.
Sex. Definition 2. Either of the two main categories, male and female, into which humans and most other living things are divided on the basis of their reproductive functions.
So, it's not chromosome. This is how far. This is the amount of mental gymnastics you have to engage in order to like be a
secularist
on this issue and say, nah, sex has still got to be a binary. Whether or not while you were like a fetus, what pathway towards male or female did your development go down?
The two and only two gamete types. Gamete production is supported through what dominant gonadal tissue you have, testes or ovaries, and their respective reproductive structures, Wolffian or Müllerian. The differentiation and development.
What the fuck? Wolffian and Müllerian?
Reproductive structures, Wolffian or Müllerian.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The differentiation and development of both the gonads and reproductive structures are determined through the action of two mechanisms. One, the function of the S or Y gene, and two, the function of androgen receptors.
because that's where it matters. It doesn't matter what comes out of that process. It just matters what it meant to do. What the fuck? This is not how the scientific community defines biological sex. What kind of how much of a hack do you have to be that you're willing to, like, run the definition of biological sex back so far so that it fits within your worldview because you're so afraid of what the medical community has come to the conclusion of?
Perhaps you should ask yourself the same question.
I mean, we can go. Here's a good one by the New York Times. My sex is not binary. Pretty good story. You can read this as well. I mean, I encourage you to go to the Ultimate Research document. You can find it. You can go to Vosh's website and type !doc and find this document and come down here.
Wow. 3 whole sources, one of which is an opinion piece. Another which may as well just be a picture of a rainbow for all the knowledge that Xanderhal has managed to garner from it. No wonder he still believes in hermaphrodites.
Like, what the fuck? What? Nobody... I mean, this can be a component of biological sex, but it's definitely not the definition of it.
Sex. Noun. Definition 2. Either of the 2 main categories, male and female, into which humans and most other living things are divided on the basis of their reproductive functions.
Do you guys think that, haha, go Nadia. Do you guys think that the plurality of data and, like, scientists in the medical community, with their studies and their consensus that's been peer-reviewed, do you think they didn't consider this? I'm genuinely curious. Do you think they didn't consider this?
Of course not. They were aware of it. But when your entire medical practice is based on ignoring these basic facts, then just like any other scam medicine, they have a massive financial incentive in misrepresenting reality. Lobotomies were once a scientific consensus as well.
Hey, stupid! Are you torn between caring for an intersex baby and just throwing it off a cliff like in 300? If only there was a convenient, medically sanctioned middle ground that accepted all major credit cards. Oh my gender! It's Dr. Money's Hollywood Upstairs Gender Clinic, where a leg is an arm and an arm is a leg. Call 1-800-OOYUCK to see if you qualify for a free Bat Boy. One day, perhaps while this free market mangler was having an expression session with the scalpel, he realized some of the people that he had apparently turned into boys were actually female, and some of the people that he had apparently turned into girls were actually male. The craziest things happen when you follow your dreams on behalf of someone else on their body using cosmetic surgery.
It doesn't matter what the intention, I mean, in quotes, obviously, there's not, like, intention to development in, like, life, but, like, I don't think that the intention of the development of somebody matters when what comes out of that process doesn't match what our preconceived notion of biological sex is.
I do not see why we cannot, how you say, experimentally circumcise our way out of a problem that was created by, how you say, experimental circumcision. After all, like Mama always say, the only thing that stops a bad doctor remodeling your genitals is a good doctor remodeling your genitals.
If someone is born and they have both sex organs, it doesn't matter if they were supposed to be a male or supposed to be a female. They aren't either.
Clearly, we have no choice but to destroy the sex in order to save it.
They've got, I mean, like, they've got both sex organs. We need to look at what they have now, what's going on with them now. Like, what kind of mental gymnastics is this to try to, like, justify this weird, like, regressive worldview about biological sex? It's so fucking weird.
While there are multiple pathways for sex differentiation and development, there are only 2 endpoints, male or female.
No. Wait. There are only 2 endpoints, male or female? What about people that come out and they have both genitals? We just talked about that. What the fuck?
The 2
Alright, let's watch.
People exist and break down this binary, she says. As someone who's done extensive research in sex and gender, I see this almost every day. Discussion with someone about sexual dimorphism, and they'll respond with confidence. Have you ever heard of intersex people, they ask? Of course, the answer is yes, I have. And this is where the case studies start flying in, as they tell me that intersex people are not male or female.
Not exactly. So here's the issue. It doesn't matter if they were supposed to be a male or supposed to be a female. They aren't either. They've got both sex organs. We need to look at what they have now, what's going on with them now. There are only two endpoints, male or female. What about people that come out and they have both genitals? We just talked about that.
Testes or ovaries, and their respective reproductive structures, Wolffian or Müllerian. The differentiation and development...
What the fuck? Wolffian and Müllerian?
Here is a man, confidently making a video about biological sex, who does not actually know what the Wolffian and Müllerian ducts do. He says, okay, yeah, when he reads their names on the screen.
Reproductive structures, Wolffian or Müllerian.
Okay, yeah.
But it is obvious from the arguments he has been making that he doesn't actually know what these are. Otherwise he wouldn't be asking about imaginary hermaphrodites.
The differentiation and development of both the gonads and reproductive structures are determined through the action of two mechanisms. One, the function of the SRY gene, and two, the function of androgen receptors.
Do you guys think that, gonad, yeah. Do you guys think that the plurality of data and like scientists in the medical community with their studies and their consensus that's been peer reviewed, do you think they didn't consider this? I'm genuinely curious. Do you think they didn't consider this?
No. In fact, I think it was you yourself who failed to consider this.
It doesn't matter what the intention, I mean in quotes, obviously, there's not like intention to development in like life, but like, I don't think that the intention of the development of somebody matters.
Because you don't understand how biological sex works, and not just in humans but in most life forms.
When what comes out of that process doesn't match what our preconceived notion of biological sex is. If someone is born and they have both sex organs, it doesn't matter if they were supposed to be a male or supposed to be a female. They aren't either. They've got both sex organs. We need to look at what they have now, what's going on with them now. Like, what kind of mental gymnastics is this to try to like justify this weird regressive worldview about biological sex? It's so fucking weird.
While there are multiple pathways for sex differentiation and development, there are only two endpoints, male or female.
No, wait. There are only two endpoints, male or female? What about people that come out and they have both genitals? We just talked about that.
If you have both a functional SRY gene and functional androgen receptors, you will almost always develop as a male.
Almost always.
This is the beginning of a little skit Xanderhal does where he keeps emphasizing the word almost. He's doing this because he mistakenly thinks that saying if you have both a functioning SRY gene and functioning androgen receptors, you will almost always be male means that sometimes you might not be either male or female. In reality, it actually means that sometimes, in spite of having an SRY gene and functioning androgen receptors, there can be cases where other factors cause a fetus to develop down the Müllerian pathways. In this case, these people are female. So that's the answer to what about the almost.
On the other hand, if you do not have both of these mechanisms working together, such as an absence of SRY or insensitive androgen receptors, then you will almost always develop as a female.
Almost always.
In this way, biological sex is determined through a sequential coordination of mutually antagonistic mechanisms.
Do you think the medical community hasn't considered that? Do you think that this like random dude on YouTube that read some fucking Wikipedia articles, it seems like?
Yeah, we wave decorative rainbows here, buddy. Fuck off with that Wikipedia shit.
was like, oh yeah, okay, I found the perfect debunk. I'm not going to acknowledge the data or anything.
If you're upset about the so-called data not being acknowledged, why don't you show us the data? Do you even know what the data is?
But, you know, and we're going to skim over the almost. Hey, what are the people who are almost? What about the people who are almost? I'm curious. What about them? What are they?
The answer is obvious to everyone but you and your fellow hermaphrodite enthusiasts.
Which activate the primary sex pathway of development and block the opposite sex pathway. Thus,
sex isn't binary, it's a maze.
Binary, defined through the two gametes, sperm or egg. There is no third option. To understand this...
Well, that's the issue with the spectrum. It's not, oh, there's a third... This is when it came to gender, this is what that Rose Mullet chick, that one, like, True Scum lady that I talked to, this is basically, what she, like, the thought process she had. I'm busting out the fucking MS Paint, okay?
It isn't hard to do.
Alright. Here is how I understand it. Alright, here we go. So, whoop! And then you got, whoop! There you go. Not perfect, I can't draw, so fuck off, but that's a bimodal distribution, right? Now, binary, as we all know, you have one option, or you have another option, and that's it. And there's no outliers, there's no in-between. You either are a female with a vagina and boobs and XX chromosomes, or you are a male with a dick and balls and XY chromosomes, right? That is how a binary would work.
That is actually incorrect. While there are a number of different combinations of chromosomes outside of the most common XX and XY, every single one of these combinations results in people that either do or do not have
1. The function of the S or Y gene, and 2. The function of androgen receptors.
So it is still possible to determine the developmental pathway they developed along during conception. Thus it is possible to determine every person's sex, even those with fancy chromosomes.
It's not so much that there's, a third option, as there is a shit ton of incremental changes along this spectrum.
By saying incremental changes, he is suggesting that vastly different conditions, such as Turner syndrome and Klinefelter syndrome, are merely degrees of each other. It's almost as dumb as saying that a common cold is a degree of cancer because they both exist on the illness spectrum.
Like, for example... There we go. Like, for example, there is an infinite number, or an infinite amount of numbers between 1 and 2. What are you fucking talking about? It's not what we're talking about here. There is an infinite amount of numbers between 1 and 2. 1.2, 1.1. What are you fucking talking about? It's not what we're talking about here. 1.0000001. And you can go on forever. You can split one number up into fractions and decimals forever. We're talking about people who are intersex. That's why there's an infinite amount of numbers. Plus, I mean, numbers just, you can count literally infinitely. But even between, it's not what we're talking about. What are you fucking talking about? Between numbers, you have different, you have different decimals and stuff like that, right? What are you fucking talking about? It's not what we're talking about here. It's a bit like that with sex, right? It's not so much that, oh, what is the third number? It's that there's more.
And I don't really understand how they've created that spectrum. No one can just explain how they've chosen the order.
So there isn't like a clear, visible male to female and everything in between, kind of.
Not at all. Everyone is male or female.
It's such a complicated issue. Never mind. All right, let's continue.
Let's look at how the process works in the womb. In early development, we all start out with two internal reproductive structures that will differentiate and develop based on the S or Y gene and androgens. Around the 8th week of gestation, the presence or absence of the S or Y gene differentiates the bipotential gonads into either male or female tissue.
Okay.
If SRY is present, the bipotential gonads form into testes. As the testes develop,
sometimes
they release hormones for the development of the male internal reproductive structure, Wolffian. As the male structure develops further and the testes release hormones, the female structure, Mullerian, disintegrates.
Sometimes.
Yes, dickhead, we understand, it's only sometimes. However, what you don't understand, is that there are only two structures. If one disintegrates, it's male. If the other disintegrates, it's female. There are no people with a third system or a system that is neither male or female.
On the other hand, if SRY is absent, the bipotential gonads form into ovaries. As the ovaries develop, there is no anti-Mullerian hormone present to block female development. Then, the Mullerian structure develops further, and the male structure, Wolffian, disintegrates.
Sometimes.
Thus, the SRY gene is the on-off switch which determines your gonadal differentiation, and therefore, your biological sex.
Nope! I'm sorry, medical community disagrees with you, buddy. I don't know if, like, are you like some sort of like time-traveling scientist that comes from the future, and in reality, 10 years from now, the medical community, when it's not cucked by the liberal SJWs, comes back in time and tells, and you've come to tell us, actually, in the future, the medical community has determined that sex is a binary. They just kind of walked back on all that data and all that research and all that current consensus that sex is a bimodal distribution. They just kind of, they walk back on that. This guy's actually a scientist from the future, and he's warning us all, believe it or not.
Sex. Noun. Definition 2. Either of the two main categories, male and female, into which humans and most other living things.
The video is now called From Humans to Asparagus, Females are Females. This was presumably done in an effort to make this point even more obvious than it already was.
Which humans and most other living things are divided on the basis of their reproductive functions.
So, what about intersex? Well, this is where things get more complicated, but the endpoint of male or female remains the same.
What?
Intersex is an umbrella term which represents more than 40 plus medical conditions.
True.
Each with their own specific developmental pathways.
True.
Such complexity will be explored later, but for now, all we need to know is that most individuals classified as intersex have typical gonadal differentiation into either testes or ovaries, and have
most. The problem is, and this is always what
Secularist
like to point to, chromosomes. If you consider chromosomes to have anything to do with your biological sex, and you don't have XX or XY, you don't fall into a binary there.
This is incorrect. While there are more options than XX or XY, every other combination of chromosomes is still subject to these same conditions. Therefore, even with fancier chromosomes, those people with an SRY gene and functioning androgen receptors will still proceed down the male line of development, and those without these conditions will not. So for example, someone with a 45X chromosome, or Turner syndrome, has no SRY gene, so people with this condition are female. On the other hand, someone with 47XXY chromosomes, or Klinefelter syndrome, has a Y chromosome, so people with this condition are male. This is reflected in the literature on the condition. For example, the U.S. National Library of Medicine describes Klinefelter syndrome as a sex chromosome disorder in boys and men that results from the presence of an extra X chromosome in cells. Nothing about gender identity. Nothing about a spectrum of sex. Instead, it states clearly that this is a condition in boys and men, i.e. male children and male adults.
Around the 8th week of gestation, the presence or absence of the SRY gene differentiates the bipotential gonads into either male or female tissue.
This is so weird. What a weird way to try to like define biological sex.
Sex. Noun. Definition 2. Either of the two main categories, male and female, into which humans and most other living things are divided on the basis of their reproductive functions.
Is this what you have? Is this how you have to mangle the definition in order to get it to fit this idea? It's so weird. Like, it almost sounds like I'm listening to, like, a Spirit Sciences video, right? You guys have seen those, right? Like, the Spirit Science videos where the guy, like, with the hamster voice talks about how the chakras line up and it makes your ass project spiritual light into the heavens, and, like, it sounds like that.
No, you are the one that sounds like that. The video has been talking about the concrete realities of the presence or absence of chromosomes and androgen. You are the one who is far more obsessed with personal feelings and perceptions.
It's so weird, right? I'm not even like a doctor or anything like that. I'm not a doctor or a scientist, right? I mean, there's no way that I can like know whether or not he's lying with my current like knowledge. All that I know is that the entirety of the medical community disagrees on this. The data is out there. The consensus is out there. This guy is wrong, according to the consensus among scientists. I'm going to listen to the consensus among scientists over this fucking dude.
An argument from authority, argumentum ab auctoritate, also called an appeal to authority, or argumentum ad verecundium, is a form of defeasible argument in which the opinion of an authority on a topic is used as evidence to support an argument. It is well known as a fallacy, though some consider that it is used in a cogent form when all sides of a discussion agree on the reliability of the authority in the given context. This is not the case with our current discussion. Other authors consider it a fallacy to cite an authority on the discussed topic as the primary means of supporting an argument.
Spirit gonads.
Typical Wolffian or Müllerian structures, and are therefore either male or female. So, if intersex individuals are males and females like everyone else, then why are they considered in between, ambiguous, or a third sex?
Not just a third sex, it's somewhere on the spectrum of biological sex.
So,
then why are they considered in between?
Just like the video just said. Are you even listening? Or are you still waiting for the video to listen to you?
I hate this when they try to like essentialize it down to, oh yeah, there's infinite amount of genders, name the third gender. Okay, yeah, I'll name one, I guess, but I mean, there's more than that. It's not just like 3. There's like an infinite amount. That's the problem, though. On a spectrum, there's an infinite amount of options, right? You just keep plotting down on a different area on that spectrum, and you find something else, right? Although when we talk about intersex people and different sexes, we're usually talking about like the middle of said here, actually.
Or Y gene. They lack functional androgen receptors, and the male pathway of development does not proceed. Thus, they are females. On the other hand, intersex males who have typical gonadal differentiation with differences in reproductive development can sometimes develop breast tissue and have smaller testes, a condition known as Klinefelter's, which results in a duplicate of the egg.
Dude, there's like 76 different versions of intersex. There's no way he's gonna go through them all. How much do you want to bet he's only gonna bring up the ones where, like, for them, like, yeah, they're intersex, but if you look at them, you couldn't really tell, right? Like, maybe they have, like, a smaller testicles or whatever, but, like, they look like they could just be, you know, not intersex. Is that what he's gonna try to do here? And just leave out the people who literally have both genitals? Biological sex bimodal distribution. We'll read on this a little bit on stream. Sex differences in humans have been studied in a variety of fields. In humans, biological sex consists of 5 factors present at birth. The presence of... Or, look at that! In humans, biological sex consists of 5 factors present at birth. Interesting how it doesn't say that sex is determined by the way that you were supposed to develop in the womb. It specifically says that it's at birth.
Dude, birth is after the womb. You know that, right?
Your factors present at birth.
Around the 8th week of gestation, the presence or absence of the SRY gene differentiates the bipotential gonads into either male or female tissue.
This is so weird. What a weird way to what a weird way to try to like define biological sex. The presence or absence of the SRY gene, an intronless sex-determining gene on your Y chromosome, sex-determining gene on your Y chromosome, sex-determining gene on your Y chromosome. The type of gonads, so like your genitals, I guess. The sex hormones, so like testosterone, estrogen, whatever, you know. The internal reproductive anatomy, you know, uterus, penis, things like that. And the external genitalia. Wait, gonad? Wait, what is gonads? I don't know. Listen, it's funny. It doesn't matter how many people fit into the idea of a binary when it comes to biological sex. The existence of even one person that falls outside of that binary negates the existence of a binary.
Yes, we understand, but what you don't understand, Mini Vosh, is that intersex people are always either male or female. There are no cases in which their biological sex is either something else or defined as a position on some arbitrary rainbow chart.
Or have like a mix of different chromosomes. I mean, we've already talked about how, like, I'm sorry, but this is not how biological sex is determined. The medical community would not agree with this. We've already determined that there's two types of biological sex. You have phenotypical sex, which is basically your secondary sexual characteristics, the traits that you can see physically, and then your chromosomal sex, which is basically your chromosomes. What's it called now? I don't know. Sex. It's how they determine it, right? And even there, it's not a binary, because there's a shit ton of different fucking combinations of chromosomes, right? Sex determination occurs solely by the presence or absence of the Y chromosome.
The differentiation and development of both the gonads and reproductive structures are determined through the action of two mechanisms. One, the function of the S or Y gene, and two, the function of androgen receptors.
Phenotypic sex refers to an individual's sex as determined by their internal and external genitalia. So this is specifically phenotypical traits, right? You have chromosomal sex, and you have phenotypical sex. These are different things, all right? Both, however, are not a binary. That's the funny thing. Sex determination occurs solely by the presence or absence of the Y chromosome. Presence or absence, binary. Presence or absence, binary. That's the funny thing. Phenotypical sex refers to an individual's sex as determined by their internal and external genitalia, expression of secondary sexual characteristics, and behavior. The sex of the individual can be defined in different ways, giving rise to a different conceptual framework about determined sex. Sex differences generally refer to traits that are sexually dimorphic. A subset of such differences is hypothesized to be the product of evolutionary processes of sexual selection. So, even here, when it talks about the difference, or with the definition of biological sex, it says of binary. That's the funny thing. Sex determination occurs solely by the presence or absence of the Y chromosome. 5 factors present at birth.
Let's look at how the process works in the womb. In early development, we all start out with 2 internal reproductive structures that will differentiate and develop based on the S or Y gene and androgens. Around the 8th week of gestation, the presence or absence of the S or Y gene differentiates the bipotential gonads into either male or female tissue.
Present at birth.
Around the 8th week of gestation.
Not some bullshit spirit science, pseudoscience ass shit about, oh yes, the natural way. If we presuppose that there's only supposed to be 2 sexes and sex is supposed to be binary, then we know that in reality, you're supposed to develop either into female or male, and any mistakes are just glitches in the matrix and they don't matter.
It's not that they don't matter. It's that these conditions do not constitute a separate sex just because they might look unusual. Assuming that this would be the case, is no different from the medieval thinking that dwarfs must be another species because they look so different from non-dwarfs.
And we'll just, just shove those to the side and we'll pretend like they don't exist.
No one is pretending like these conditions don't exist. They are simply putting them in their correct scientific categories, instead of placing them on some undefined spectrum that's based on how weird society perceives each condition to be.
So we can justify some weird fucking pseudoscientific idea of what biological sex is.
The answer is due to a lack of knowledge about intersex. For instance, intersex females can have typical gonadal differentiation, but differences in development of their genitalia. such as a fused labia and enlarged clitoris, a condition known as congenital adrenal hyperplasia. And yet, they are still females because they have ovaries, a Müllerian structure, and no SRY gene. Consider another.
Would you say that, though?
Yes.
It depends.
No, it doesn't.
Maybe they're leaning onto one end of the spectrum.
That doesn't really mean anything because the so-called spectrum is fabricated. But even if it wasn't, the video already specified this wasn't the case when it said.
They are still females because they have ovaries, a Müllerian structure, and no SRY gene.
The problem with this video is it seems to presuppose that sex is binary.
The video doesn't presuppose that sex is binary, it merely understands that this is the case from the available evidence. On the other hand, Xanderhal presupposes that sex is a spectrum, despite only having MS Paint projects of varying qualities to back up this claim.
Which is obviously a weird thing, because this guy wants sex to be binary, so he's finding arguments to try to back that up, right? The problem is it presupposes it. There's nothing, like, this doesn't negate the existence of a spectrum. This is just confirmation bias.
Another case, where gonadal differentiation and development are both atypical. Intersex females who have the SRY gene but lack functional androgen receptors will have female morphology, a condition known as complete androgen insensitivity syndrome. And yet, even though these individuals have the SRY...
Why is he, like, hitting me with the breakneck bullshit that's irrelevant to this topic?
Maybe he's talking about this because before you were asking about the sometimes cases where having a Y chromosome still results in a female human. Remember? You were quite insistent on wanting to know about the people who were almost.
Almost always. And we're gonna skim over the almost. Hey, what are the people who are almost? What about the people who are almost? I'm curious. What about them? What are they?
Well, congratulations. It is being explained to you right now and you're too ignorant to see that.
Let's say we like go down the list, right? And you say, well, I got a dick, I got balls, I got like testes, I got everything else, you know, I'm pretty on the masculine side. Then you would be able to say you're a male, you know? I don't feel like your people identify that much with their biological sex. I think they identify a lot more with their gender. At least from my experience, it seems like people seem to identify with their gender way more than their biological sex. Like, I'm a guy, I'm a girl.
Guy. Definition. A man. Man. Definition. Adult human male.
I'm a girl.
Girl. Definition 1. A female child. Definition 2. A young or relatively young woman.
Woman. Noun. Definition: an adult human female.
I'm a male or I'm a female, you know? It's just so weird. I don't know, this shit is like, it's pseudoscientific. This is pseudoscience. I would actually like to see some sort of like biologist tackle this video and debunk it. It would be pretty interesting because I know they can if they like anybody who has like who's like learned enough on this, but like
for instance, not someone who is so ignorant they believe in hermaphrodites. Is that the type of person you are imagining?
I guess if you redefine biological sex to mean how you were supposed to develop, then sure, sex is a binary. If you completely change the definition of biological sex, then sex is a binary.
Sex. Definition 2. Either of the two main categories, male and female, into which humans and most other living things are divided on the basis of their reproductive functions.
You got me, dude. Left wing destroyed.
The presence or absence of SRY and functional androgen receptors.
Sex determination occurs solely by the presence or absence of the Y chromosome. Like, I'm sorry, but this is not how biological sex is determined. The medical community would not agree with this. We've already determined that there's two types of biological sex. You have phenotypical sex, which is basically your secondary sexual characteristics, the traits that you can see physically, and then your chromosomal sex, which is basically your chromosomes. What's it called? No. I don't know. Sex, it's how they determine it, right? It's how they determine it, right? It's how they determine it, right?
If you meant how scientists determine sex, then yes, we know.
And even there, it's not a binary, because there's a shit ton of different fucking combinations of chromosomes, right? Oh my god, it's so fucking stupid.
That is actually incorrect. While there are a number of different combinations of chromosomes outside of the most common XX and XY, every single one of these combinations results in people that either do or do not have
the presence or absence of SRY and functional androgen receptors.
So it is still possible to determine the developmental pathway they developed along during conception. Thus it is possible to determine every person's sex, even those with fancy chromosomes.
Oh my god, it's so fucking stupid.
And yet they are still males because they have testes, a Wolffian structure, the SRY gene, and functional androgen receptors.
Like I said, this is not how biological sex is determined.
Thank you for that baseless assertion. It was much more convincing the 7th time you made it.
For more complex intersex conditions, a case-specific analysis of their developmental pathway is needed, a topic for a future video. But even with more complex conditions, the sex of these individuals can still be determined through a combination of genetic, hormonal, and morphological markers. Thus, the actual sex of intersex infants is not determined through subjective societal criteria or some innate feeling.
Oh no, here we come. Here we go with the medical doctors and scientists cannot determine someone's sex.
That is literally the opposite of what he said. You are so bad at this.
It's biologically, ethereally, religiously determined.
Biologically and religiously? What the fuck are you talking about?
It's determined through the presence or absence of SRY and functional androgen receptors.
Sex determination occurs solely by the presence or absence of the Y chromosome. You got me, dude. You blew the entire medical community. You blew them the fuck out. Biologists, blown the fuck out. You fucking got us. If that's how you hey, listen, if that's how you determine biological sex determination occurs solely by the presence or absence of the Y chromosomes, and that's it, and you get rid of every other way in which you can define biological sex. I guess maybe then it is binary. Although even then it's probably not, because he brought up like 4 different types of intersex, if I remember correctly. There's probably intersex people that wouldn't fit into male or female based on these criteria that he's dug up.
No, there is not, and he has already explained why that is the case. But you have failed to comprehend these fairly straightforward explanations.
That's the funny thing. Yeah, you've destroyed the elite liberal science agenda. You got him. Scientists blown the fuck out.
Saying that intersex people are not males or females actually others them, as it reduces them to the mere appearance of their genitals.
How? It doesn't matter if they were supposed to be a male or supposed to be a female. They aren't either. They've got, I mean, like, they've got both sex organs.
As it reduces them to the mere appearance of their genitals.
They've got both sex organs. Wait, this same person would unironically misgender trans people? Like, this guy is transphobic. I've seen the titles of his other videos.
Yes, we saw you see them. Despite only reading a handful of titles, you still managed to misunderstand at least one of them. But please do continue with your assessment.
This guy is like a channel dedicated to shitting on trans people, or like trans ideology or whatever. This guy would unironically say it's okay to misgender trans people, and he's going to go and say that that's saying that intersex people are not male or female excludes them and reduces them to the appearance of their genitals. They aren't either. They've got, I mean, like, they've got both sex organs. You know, this is so fucking weird. Why is he trying to appeal to feelings here?
The video is not making an appeal to feelings. The video has repeatedly mentioned the objective conditions of having
the presence or absence of SRY and functional androgen receptors.
You are the only one who has implied that gender identities, i.e. feelings, might influence sex.
That's how he's trying to, justify it here. At the very end, he's like spat out a bunch of nonsense where he tries to redefine biological sex, and then he does like the little like appeal to feelings, like, yeah, if we say that sex isn't a binary, then you're excluding people, and but like this doesn't happen. This isn't an argument. It doesn't matter if they were supposed to be a male or supposed to be a female. They aren't either. Like, saying that someone isn't male or female doesn't exclude them. It just is saying that sex isn't a binary. There's more than just two options. It's not exclusionary. What the fuck are you talking about? What you're doing is by definition exclusionary.
Imagine telling an intersex girl she's not a female because she has a large clitoris. Or an
Nobody's doing this. This is a straw man.
Intersex boy, he's not a male because he has small testes.
Do you think that anybody is saying this? Do you think he's in good faith here? Do you think he believes that anybody in the medical community or even in the SJW community are saying this? Now,
can you discuss a bit about the origins of assigned female at birth and assigned male at birth?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's used a lot, yeah. So that comes from intersex surgeries, which is something that it's a human rights issue. So it's when a child is born and their genitalia is ambiguous, so it's not clear on inspection whether it's male or female, the genitalia. What sometimes will happen if for example, it's a small penis, then rather than saying the child is male, what happens is they perform surgery on the child and they convert the penis to a vagina and raise the child as female. So that's the assignment of the sex. So it's not their actual sex, it's the sex they surgically assign to them. So, it's just a really awful thing, and so every intersex campaigns against it, but it's something that does happen, unfortunately.
Reactionaries will say that someone's not a man if they have a small enough dick, right? But regardless, this is so weird.
But it's something that does happen, unfortunately.
It doesn't matter if they were supposed to be a male or supposed to be a female. They aren't either.
Such comments would be not just wrong, but downright evil. And yet, such an offensive practice happens every day, as intersex individuals can attest. Furthermore, saying that intersex people are
Xanderhal looks confused because he has basically no awareness of the system of oppression intersex people face. He still thinks
they have both sex organs
every day, as intersex individuals can attest. Furthermore, saying that intersex people are in between male and female also conflates their serious developmental conditions with identity and expression, of which there is no relation.
Sure. So here's the issue. The argument against the feelings thing that he's putting up about it being exclusionary. Most people in society, in most interactions, when it comes to your identity and everything, biological sex doesn't make that much of a difference.
Thank you for that baseless assertion. It was much more convincing the 7th time you made it.
If we just got rid of the description of male and female and just had masculine and feminine, right? Like, if someone said, what is your sex? And be like, I'm this masculine or something like that. Let's say we like go down the list, right? And you say, well, I got a dick, I got balls, I got like testes, I got everything else, you know, I'm pretty on the masculine side. Then you would be able to say you're a male, you know?
Wait, wasn't the whole point of this silly exercise that you were trying to avoid saying male or female?
If we just got rid of the description of male and female and just had masculine and feminine, right?
What point is there in just saying masculine, especially when that has no meaning outside of its relationship to maleness?
I don't feel like your people identify that much with their biological sex. I think they identify a lot more with their gender. At least from my experience, it seems like people seem to identify with their gender way more than their biological sex. Like, I'm a guy.
Guy. Definition. A man. Man. Definition. Adult human male.
I'm a girl.
Girl. Definition 1. A female child. Definition 2. A young or relatively young woman.
Woman. Definition. An adult human female.
Well, not I'm a male or I'm a female, you know? It's just so weird. I don't know. This shit is like it's pseudoscientific. This is pseudoscience. I would actually like to see some sort of like biologist tackle this video and debunk it. It would be pretty interesting because I know they can if they like anybody who has like who's like learned enough on this. But like I guess if you redefine biological sex to mean how you were supposed to develop, then sure, sex is a binary.
We know.
If you completely change the definition of biological sex...
Sex. Noun. Definition 2. Either of the two main categories, male and female, into which humans and most other living things are divided on the basis of their reproductive functions.
Whether or not while you were like a fetus, what pathway towards male or female did your development go down? And sex is a binary. You got me, dude. Left wing destroyed.
If you want to talk about the deep discomfort of the arts, dive in. So,